The one who is not busy.
It's right out of my mouth. How are we doing on the sound? Everybody hear me? You don't hear me? Can you not hear me? This is my Zagu. Can you see her down there? So forgive the disturbance of during Zazen. We have a kind of a perfect storm of technical issues that neither camera seemed to work with any of the plugs or any of the computers. And so now we're on my iPhone. So I hope this is adequate. Let us know. Thank you, Bonnie, for being behind the curtain there. If anybody online has difficulty with the audio or the visual, let us know and we'll try and make it right. Right, Skyla? So does it seem like we're good then?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes, the verse before the Dharma talk. Ready? Gasho? Can you gasho? Vast and subtle, we now have a chance to hear it, study it, and practice it. We vow to realize its true meaning. The Dharma is vast and subtle. We now have a chance to hear it, study it, and practice it. We vow to realize its true meaning. The Dharma is vast and subtle. We now have a chance to hear it, study it, and practice it. We vow to realize its true meaning. See, I brought her in the Zendo with her shoes on, and she took one off. She's like, I can't wear my shoes in the Zendo, Daddy. No. What do you think? You want some water? I almost never drink the water during the Dharma talk, but it's good. I don't actually have a Dharma talk. I just thought I would. There's nothing in front of me. I think I have some stuff down here. Okay. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for your patience. Everything look good, Bonnie? Okay.
I just lost your screen. Okay, we're good.
So, I've just been delighted with exploring a koan and exploring koans with you all during this practice period. Okay, I think she's done with me. Let's see. Want to walk to somebody?
I don't know about that one with shoes.
Yeah. The one who is not busy, thank you. Sometimes she does that one. So I've loved calling, that we've got our cloud zendo. And it just came to me, this idea of together, we're the cloud forest zendo. We've got these trees here and we're all like these living trees in the cloud with us, and we're all one ecosystem of our Dharma practice field. And some of you, like Lorena, have been in many cloud practice periods and now are here in person. So just thank you for making this possible. Can you believe it's not even been a week since we started? It'll be a week and a couple hours. Feels like it's been a lot longer. We yesterday, Sensei Koren spoke on case 22, Yanto's bow and shout. Hey, Natalie. I've never actually shouted at a Dharma talk, and I'm not going to do it now, but someday I might be worthy, and I hope you're here for it. And that was a beautiful talk he spoke on straddling the holy and the profane, the relative and the absolute. And on Sunday, Natalie Goldberg gave a talk on case 25, exploring the broken fan, the brokenness of ourselves, and movingly talking about her teacher and bringing forth the whole rhinoceros, which we had on our altar for a time, and now it is on the altar in the hallway. And on Saturday, Wendy Johnson Sensei started us off, not looking at a specific koan, but looking at the text as a whole, the Shoyo Roku, the Book of Serenity, inviting in the metaphor of gardening, tangled vines, the wisteria. I mean, I think if you're talking, just these images come to mind. The Jerusalem cricket. Did any of you go look it up? It's like really heebie-jeebies for sure. Beautiful beings that they are. And since then, it looks like we're all around in the 20s. So here I'd like to talk about case 21. And I think we'll also hear about case 20. Yunyan Sweeps the Ground. So how many of you chose 21? Did anybody in here choose 21? Yunyan Sweeps the Ground? It's kind of one of the popular ones. Maybe people you could tell me if many hands are raised in the cloud for those who chose it. But I want to tell it a little bit kind of how I imagine it. So it concerns Yunyan and Daowu, who are brothers, and some say they're actual blood brothers. In some places, usually it's referred to as they're just Dharma brothers, but it's interesting to think that they're actual blood brothers. Daowu is the older, not by much, I think, by how they interact. They're very, they like to Dharma combat, as we see throughout the koans. So I imagine Yunyan and Daowu, Yunyan's the younger one. I imagine them in the sunroom during Soji. Yunyan is sweeping the brick floor. And how many of you have swept the brick floor during, so yeah, you know that feeling. And Yunyan's spraying vinegar onto the windows. And he's, getting it nice and clean, all the little dots, the fly dots. And he's polishing it, and he sees the reflection of Yunyan sweeping behind him in the sunroom. And something's not right. Yunyan's a little quick or a little jerky, or something's off, right? He couldn't tell, but since they're so close, he just feels something. So without even looking over, he just mutters under his breath, Taikukusho. Taikukusho is usually translated as too busy. Just loud enough for Yunyan to hear him and to look up and say, well, you should know there is one who is not busy. And then Daowu turns around and says, oh, then there is a second moon. And Yunyan picks up his broom and says, which moon is this? And that's the end of the koan. So what's going on here? We often think of Yunyan as, what I'm imagining what was happening in his head when he was doing that. When we're sweeping, we're trying to be there, we're trying to be present, one with our sweeping, and sometimes our mind is going. Sometimes we might be fully present. And maybe you bump that shoji screen door, you know how that goes. You barely touch it, and the whole building feels like it's shaking. It just makes a loud noise. And so maybe he knocked it, and that's when his brother Daowu was like too busy. But whatever was happening inside, Daowu had this chance to just poke at him, just check. And sometimes nothing, maybe it was just to check. He's checking on him. It's like a way of saying I love you, like too busy. And so he says, you should know there is one who is not cuckoo. That's the Japanese. There's one who is not busy. And in the translation, I looked up these characters, and in Chinese it's chu chu or cuckoo in Japanese. And colloquially, it means trifling or insignificant or merely. It's very different than busy. But in kind of ancient literary Chinese, it can mean many things. Let's see, I have a list of them somewhere. One of them is hardworking. So you'll see it listed some places as you're working too hard, you're trying too hard. Too busy has stuck with us, I think, in our modern time because we're so busy, right? So it could mean complacent, self-satisfied. Oh, you're too self-satisfied. Maybe he's like, I'm sweeping, yeah. It could mean ordinary, clumsy, foolish, too clumsy. You knock the soji, toiling, hardworking. But this, and Wendy Johnson was in my office and I was like, what do you think? This is insignificant, trifling. She's like, yes, trifling. What does it mean? Find the etymology. Because that's what you would do, of course, and me too. So trifling comes from the old French truffle. Is that how you say it? Where's Julie? Truffle. Yeah. And it's not related to truffle, apparently, but it used to mean deceit or false, and then it turned into insignificant. So it's just this. It gives me this sense of like it's just not all there. You're not being real. You're sweeping, whether you're trying to act like you're enlightened or not. You're just not all there. And so too busy is too unconnected, too disconnected. So Yunyan responds, you should know there is one who is not chu-chu, who is not like this. There's one who is completely present and aware. And so if you say that, though, bye, thank you for coming. If you say there's one who is not busy, you've set up this dichotomy between the one who is busy and the one who is not busy, right? If you put words to that, whatever that experience was for Yunyan of being in this flow, you put words to it and say there's one who is not busy, boom, you've bifurcated reality to the busy and the not busy. And that's not to belittle what Yunyan said. So the one who is not busy is very important and something we should all find in our samu and our work. And I'll mention that later. He speaks about that. But that's why Daoist says, then there are two moons. Or then there is a second moon, more literally, because he's bifurcating. And so what do you say if you were caught in duality that way? You're like, okay, I was bifurcating. Which moon is this? He puts it right back to him and shows him just this. What is this reality? And in that way, he brings it together, back together. So that's the main koan, and I loved sitting with not just the one who is not busy. And I asked everyone to, while you're doing samu today, feel into that. Can you find the one who is not busy? Anybody have a sense of that when you were? I won't call on you. I'm just curious if you, yeah. Thank you. Finding that space of that flow. Excuse me. The other thing that has really stuck with me with this koan, and as you might have found when working on your koans, is how connected they are to everything else, both in terms of our life and our world, but also in the lineage, the stories. And I don't remember if it was Natalie or Wendy who talked about how the voices speak through the centuries to each other. And one person is responding to another, and it's all in one page for us, but it was like centuries later, somebody responds. And this is exactly one of those kinds of stories. Because Yunyan, does anybody recognize the name Yunyan? Yunyan Tangsheng, honored one. Dongshang Liangjie, honored one. We chant his name every time we do the Sandokai and chant the ancestors because he's one of our lineage ancestors in that line. And I found this wonderful chart, which I think is the same chart that Natalie showed us, except in English. No, it's not. Okay, so Andy Ferguson. I know yours is huge, but okay. So this is by Andy Ferguson as well. So imagine it's related, if not similar. But yours looked like it was Chinese. So we've put this on the resource page, and Bonnie can share the picture. Well, it is, but it's okay. We switched the computer, so maybe it's not on there. Maybe you can see. But we put it on the resource page. But this shows from, this is Zen ancestors in China, the 5 houses. And it's kind of the family tree. And when we do our chanting of the ancestors, we have one line because it's like 1 to 1 to 1. But that's not really how it was, right? The family style was really people were meeting with many different people and had Dharma brothers and so on. And just like us, we have one father of a father, a mother of a mother, a mother. But we still, you go back 10 generations and there are hundreds of people who are your ancestors, right? So here I've highlighted Yunyan and Daowu. And I know you can't see it, but you can see the red, right? They're right there. And over here is Baizhang, who is a famous teacher who Yunyan studied with for 20 years, and Daowu studied with for some time as well. Baizhang is famous for the phrase, a day without work is a day without food. I bet you've heard that. And he's also famous for the fox spirit that lived as a fox spirit for 500 years until he got a turning word from Baizhang, also known as hyakujo in Japanese. And the turning word was, an enlightened person does not evade cause and effect. The question was, does an enlightened person, are they free of cause and effect? And the person who became the fox said, yes, they're free of cause and effect. And that's a big no-no, because though they may be free, they do not evade cause and effect. So he became a wild fox spirit for 500 years, came to see Baizhang, who gave him this turning word. So Baizhang's part of our story, our family, and he's way over there on that end. And he gave rise both to the 2 of the schools, the House of Fayan and the House of Fayan and Rinzai. So Linji or Rinzai is in the green, and it's written. Most of these schools were absorbed into the Rinzai school over time, and there's been some work to separate them and whatnot. But in the end, what we have today is mostly the Soto, the Saodong, which became the Soto in Japanese, which is here in the red, and then the green is the Rinzai. So we have Yunyan, who became our Dharma ancestor here in Soto, and you go along down the line of the red, which is the Soto. And there in this box, closer to the bottom, still he was born in 1091, is Hongzhi. And Hongzhi is the one who collected all of these stories for us for the Book of Serenity. And then here next to Hongzhi, and Hongzhi didn't have any heirs himself, so he's actually not chanted in our lineage, right? We don't say his name, but of course he's very much in our school. And then down the line to Ehidogen, and we have another chart like this of more people who come all the way down to Roshi. So, and here, this is interesting. Daowu, who's Yunyan's brother, does have a few people below him. Sekiso Keisho, and then Jufang Daochin, Heishan Wuyan. Some of them show up in some koans, but the line sort of ended at some point. We don't know when. I mean, maybe there's still people around, or it got absorbed. And that's actually an interesting thing. Is if you just geeky side fact, if you imagine your family tree, right? It goes one, and then it has two parents, and then four grandparents, and it goes up like this, right? If you go back 100 generations, you would imagine that it just keeps widening and widening. But at a certain point, the number of people in that line is greater than the number of people alive that have ever been alive. So how is it that, do the ancestors keep going? Well, what actually happens, it's a diamond shape. And all of the ancestors, it really, maybe not such a sharp diamond, it probably goes like this and then straightens out. Maybe it's asymptotic. Because the ancestors, there's so many people up there that everybody's, thousandth cousin. And so it doesn't keep widening. And so there's a lot of, Wendy might call it hanky-panky. You're just influencing me badly, Wendy. And so lots of interconnection there. And I think likewise with this chart, there's so much interconnection, and that's one of the beauties of these stories. As we see, oh, go to this master, go to that master, and people are going to each other and checking. So, and a lot of this, this was also really interesting. I found this book, which I didn't know about before. Maybe some of you did. It's called the Jingde Denkoroku, or the Jingde Transmission of the Lamp. And it's not the Transmission of the Lamp by Keizan, which is 100 koans. This record was written much before and is the source text for a lot of the koans. It has 1,701 stories of all of the ancient Buddhas, all the way through all of the people here, and is also the source text for Andy Ferguson's the Chinese ancestors, the Zen heritage. And so just reading through, and it's in 30 volumes, and it's in translation. It's in 8 books by Randolph Whitfield, and they're kind of, it was a huge monumental task to translate, I think. And so they're kind of bare bones. It's just the stories, but it's so interesting to see. You can go to Dao's section and find many more stories, not just of him and Yunyan, but of other experiences he had, and it just makes you feel this connection. So then, and in Yunyan, so he studied with Baizhang, and then after 20 years with Baizhang, apparently he hadn't gotten anywhere. This is, our enlightened grandfather. And I love this passage from Dan Layton about Yunyan, because I feel like this sometimes. Yunyan remains an icon of paradoxical enigma, a long-time failed student who became teacher of the founder of a major Chan lineage. Yunyan serves as a good example of how much sustained effort it may take to understand our own life and practice, and a good reminder of the practice of patience. He finally did awaken when he heard Yao Shan's appreciation for Baizhang's ability to elicit his monks' attention by calling to them after driving them out of the hall with his staff. So I'll mention this story because it's such an interesting story. So Yunyan, okay, we're talking about the guy who's sweeping and said, the one who's not busy, right? So Yunyan, probably sometime later, is with Yao Shan, who eventually became his teacher and is in our lineage, Yao Shan Weiyan. And Yao Shan was like, what did you study all that time? You can imagine him going like, there are other stories where he's clearly doesn't get it. Yunyan doesn't get it. And Baizhang's just like, and there's one story where Dao is like behind the door listening to Yunyan trying to give Baizhang the right answer, and he can't do it. And Dao is just like so nervous, he makes his thumb bleed. He's biting it like, no. You can just imagine. I'm just like, yeah, that's me. Just don't. So that's Daoyi. So Yunyan, he's like, what did you study that whole time? And he kind of lists off a couple of the things. He's like, oh, the 3 this and the 6 that. And he's like, yeah. But tell me something else that Baizhang did. And finally he says, well, Yunyan said, once he entered the hall and all the monks were standing in rows. He suddenly scattered them with his staff and they all ran in every direction. Ugh! And then he said, oh, monks! And they turned. And as soon as they turned, he said, what is it? Okay, so sorry, it was a little truncated. So let's just imagine we're all standing there for liturgy. Okay, we're in rows. Roshi's not there yet. She comes roaring in with her Jizo staff, shaking it, like gonna hit you, everybody runs and like, well, what's happening? Where's Wendy? And everybody's scattering and she says, students! And everybody looks up. And she says, what is it? And then that's the end of what Yunyan has to say. But Yaoshan, who's listening to the story, says, why didn't you say that before? Today, thanks to you, I have been able to meet my brother Hai, my brother Baizhang. So this is that speaking across the centuries, although they were contemporaries, so not across the centuries, but across the miles. Maybe they never met. But when Yaoshan said that, why didn't you tell me that? Now I understand my brother Baizhang. That's when Yunyan woke up. That's his enlightenment story. With these words, the master was greatly awakened. So something about the connection, something about what is it, woke up for him. And that's a wonderful other entrance. The koans speak to each other and inform each other. When I read that one, I learn a little bit more about Yunmen and as this failed student who finally got it. And then he's her ancestor, which is so cool. And he's the teacher of Dongshan, right? Dongshan Liangjie, or Tozan in Japanese, is the one who ostensibly wrote the Jewel Mirror Samadhi, which we chant frequently, and is the founder of the Caodong school, the Soto school, which then became our school. And so what happened then? It's like you want to follow these trails down, this failed monk who finally got it after decades. How could he be the grandfather of this lineage? So in case 49 of the Book of Serenity, did anyone choose case 49? I'm curious. This is the one on Dongshan presents offerings before the image. So this is after Yunyan is long gone, right? And he's presenting offerings like we do at our ancestor's altar. And I won't say the whole koan, but that's the kind of the stage. But in the commentary to the koan by Wansong, it says this: when Dongshan took leave of Yunyan, so he was going to leave, and that was the last he was going to see of him, Dongshan asked, after your death, if someone asks me if I can describe your reality, how shall I reply? After a while, Yunyan said, just this is it. Dongshan sank into thought. Yunyan said, you are in charge of this great matter. You must be thoroughgoing. Dongshan left without saying anything more. Later, as he was crossing a river, he saw his reflection, and then for the first time, he was thoroughly awakened. Thereupon, he composed a verse. Just don't seek from others, or you'll be far estranged from self. Now I go on alone. Everywhere I meet it, it now is me. I now am not it. One must understand in this way to merge with thusness. And when I read that about Yunyan saying, just this is it, you know, this phrase that's become so important in our tradition, I thought of that broom. Which moon is this? And maybe that was the moment, prodded by Daowu, you know, challenged by his brother. Well, it's the second moon. That he first got that glimpse of just this is it. Maybe. So in that way, I've been exploring this koan, obviously intellectually in a way, and studying it and looking at the words, and also sitting with it and feeling into the one who is not busy. And which moon is this? I have to go down another geek path just for a minute. The second moon, it says in the commentary that it's from the Heroic March Sutra. And so I was like, what is that? That's so interesting. So that's the Shurangama Sutra. And this is really interesting. All of these webs, this sutra where the Buddha is talking mostly to Ananda about the theory of enlightenment and the different, what's delusion and what's not, and using many metaphors. And it's in this sutra that we get the analogy of the finger pointing at the moon. And just, it's so clear, and it's exactly as you probably think it is in the sutra. The teachings are the finger pointing at the moon. You can't see the moon. But if you look at the finger and you say, that's the moon, that's delusion too. If you take the teachings for the truth themselves, that's not it. The finger itself is a pointer. It's pointing away from itself. It's saying, this is not it. The teachings are not the truth, but they're there designed to point you in the right direction, which is non-conceptual. You know, you can't talk about the moon, so you have to only point to it. So that's the first metaphor that many of us hear about the Dharma and the finger pointing at the moon. I think it was in Enter the Dragon, right? That just came to my, like, that's where I first heard that, when I watched Enter the Dragon. Anyway, wow. And so in another space, it talks about the second moon. And he's talking about delusion and reality. And this is really strange. I'm not asking you to do this, but if you press your eyeball, apparently, you'll see a second moon. And I'm blind in one eye, so I'm not sure if what I'm seeing is the same second moon. Like, I don't see two of my finger, but I do see like a kind of a light globe appearing in the top. Is that the moon? Anyway, if you look up at the moon and you press your eyeball, you'll see a second moon, according to the Buddha. And which...
How hard do you have to press?
Yeah, don't press too hard. That's what happened to my other eye. I just was like, where's the moon? No, I was trying to find enlightenment, but that's another story. So when you look at the moon and you press your eye and you see a second moon, which moon is real? Which moon is real? But what if they go like this? Isn't that what happens? There's in these interstitial commentaries, is that the right word? You know, when you read some versions of the text have these, I think, are they wansong, the commentaries within the koan? Those are really interesting sometimes. Do I have that one? And he says, oh, I'm sorry, right, he says, only two? So this is when, then there are two moons, Daowu says. Wanzu says, only two? There are hundreds, thousands, myriads of moons. Which moon is the real one? What does that even mean? And of course, this, I don't know if this is where Dogen got this or not, but this reminds me at least of this beautiful passage from the Genjo Koan, where Dogen is saying about the moon. Although its light is wide and great, the moon is reflected even in a puddle an inch wide. The whole moon and the entire sky are reflected in dewdrops on the grass, or even in one drop of water. The depth of the drop is the height of the moon. Literally true. Optically. Each reflection, however long or short its duration, manifests the vastness of the dewdrop and realizes the limitlessness of the moonlight in the sky. And I just close my eyes and imagine, a dew-filled valley at night with 1,000 pinpoints, kind of like at Rohatsu. What was it? In Indra's net? There was, after one misty night, do you remember that? It was like foggy all night. You couldn't even see 100 feet. And the next morning, everything was covered in drops of dew. And I turned around to look back at the Zendo, and it was like 10,000 Zendos, 10,000 lights, just all sparkling, like Indra's net. And so here, we're all reflections of the moon in that way, right? Every single one of us has our own perspective, our own view of things. We're all watching during Soji, as Daowu and Yunyan are having this Dharma combat, and we all have our own moon on it, our own enlightened perspective. Which moon is this? Is not to negate the diversity, the plurality of our experience. I think if it negates anything, it's the cutting up that our conceptual mind does. And so Daowu was very right to ask, which moon, then there is a second moon, just to check that Yunyan isn't doing this in his mind. Oh, there's one who is not busy. Okay, are you dividing it up intellectually? Do you have awareness and then the self? Do you have enlightened nature and then samsaric nature? Because if you've done that, you've sown the division that is the root of suffering already. But Yunyan then holding up the broom and saying, which moon is this? I hope reassures his brother Daowu that indeed it's a unified experience. It's already there. And in fact, the bifurcation, the separation is actually not real anyway. You just have to sweep. So I'll end with a verse from Dogen on this koan, one more connection. Who sweeps the ground and also sees the moon? Holding up the moon, his sweeping is truly not in vain. Within tens of thousands of moons is placed this moon. Although called the second, how could there be a first? Who sweeps the ground and also sees the moon? Holding up the moon, his sweeping is truly not in vain. Within tens of thousands of moons is placed this moon. Although called the second, how could there be a first?